I have, uh, I have been given a tough subject to moderate, and you know, judging by the quality of the panel, you can sympathize with me uh, if there are going to be any slip-ups. But we just heard Jim, and we heard about, we've this whole day we've been hearing about programmatic and so many other ways in which advertisers, marketers, brands are looking at reaching their audiences. Um, the magazine has always been quintessentially a storyteller, and I believe that brands have always valued storytelling. I would like to start by asking, whatever happened to the days when magazines used to build brands? Can we ever expect that day to return? And I would like to ask Anita to give her perspective.
Thank you, Srini. Thank you so much for having me here. We were just having a backstage discussion, Srini and me, before the session. And the question was about, are magazines now not really helping in brand building? Brands have always been doing storytelling, right? That's how they've been, enticing the audiences. And the way the magazine journey has traversed over the years, if you see, I mean, people today say, oh, magazines have lost their sheen. People today say that, well, we don't have budgets for magazines. Clients say that. The only question there is that in yesteryears, we looked at magazines as tools which used to engage audiences. So there were newspapers which were call to action. Magazines has always been platforms back then, and I'm sure some of them are continuing now as well, to responsible in building brands, because you had engaging communities which were actually reading those magazines, which had in-depth information about any topic, be it education, be it health, be it finance, be it anything, under the sun. There were specialized magazines, so they were catering to women, they were catering to men, fashion, travel, general interest, etc., etc. So that time magazines used to engage the audiences, and for brands, engaged audiences were the most important ones, and that is how brands were built. Sorry to say, today brands are built in a jiffy, and they go off also in a jiffy, right? I mean, if Cadbury spent so many years spending money, and that's why we remember Cadbury's. I mean, Mama Earth is going through a bad time because it was a digital first brand, and they suddenly now are, talking about going phygital, right? So you're getting into brick and mortar and you're spending more money there, and your bottom lines and top lines are not talking real sense. So the question here is that, brands have, I think, moved away from thinking that engagement with communities over a period of time actually results in brand building. That is where I think, Shani, to answer your question, probably that one talks about the sheen going away, it's going away, but I think if we re-engineer and reinvent ourselves, I don't think there's anything that is impossible today, right? So the question lies in how do magazines re-engineer and reinvent themselves so that with so much happening in the environment around us, where we don't have time to read. Kids don't read today, as I think you were mentioning in your earlier thing, that it's all about listening and seeing, like viewing, right, in the earlier session. And that's true. So if you were to videograph your magazines, yeah, probably it will have more viewers as compared to, readers, as they may say. So yes, I mean, it's the way you look at it, it's the way brands look at it, really.
Mohit?
I agree with Anita ji when she says that today the brands are being made in a jiffy, and I think the whole question of ROI, the way it has come into our marketing mix, has kind of disoriented the way a brand building used to happen classically in an old school thinking when we started our careers. And at that point in time, magazine had a very clear role to play. In fact, they had a role to play in our own lives. We have grown up on magazines from Dharmyug to to Lotpot, to Madhu Muskan, to competition success, depending on what life stage you were in at that point in time. So magazines have had a very, very strong association with all of us and with all the brands that have been launched in the past. But in today's day and age, because of the rush of ROI, we are not planning content, we are planning a return on investment. And in that pressure, I think we are using magazines on digital, but then we are not using them for building brands. We are using them to give us a result, which is why probably there is a disconnect in the way magazines have been classically been there for storytelling. And today brands are not looking so much at storytelling, but more at a return on investment.
Thanks, Mohit. At least it's heartening to know that, brands and, the agencies are looking at it from this perspective. So there is still some elbow room for us to, make our way out there. And Jean-Paul, your any thoughts on this?
Yes, there are a lot of brands in the Netherlands who are creating magazines to reach their audience. And sometimes they use the help of publishers. But there is also a wide range of agencies who is helping those big brands. By example, there's one big supermarket chain in the Netherlands called Albert Heijn. They produce the Allerhande, and that's a magazine totally filled up with recipes. We were talking about numbers. 6 million people are cooking from the Allerhande during Christmas. So 6 million, there's 1 of the 3 people in the Netherlands are eating the recipes published in a magazine by a brand. So those kinds of magazines are really also a competitor for the publishing industry, because there are a lot of foodies magazines and a lot of recipe magazines. And what you see is when you face that kind of companies and brands, yeah, that has to be an inspiration for yourself to create high valuable, inspiring content.
I think there's a lot to take away from that. How a magazine responds to creating or engaging more deep with their communities is something that we should really take away from. And Mohit, here's to you. I think you answered one half of my question, but I'm going to get to that anyways. Today, a magazine brand, somewhere, even getting a foot on the door of the advertiser and getting face time with the advertiser is becoming really, really difficult, because the moment you say magazine, you have television, which gives you reach, you have digital, which gives you ROI. And then you have newspapers that give you, instant, you want your offers and you want your stuff going out there, you have your newspapers. And magazines are somewhere relegated. The moment you approach an advertiser saying magazine, it's already like, okay, chalo, what next? So somewhere, even though magazines today, and I was telling Anita a little bit earlier, magazines today are no longer just print brands. Any magazine worth their salt, today we have a formidable digital presence. We have a very, very significant social media presence where, like you were mentioning, Anita, many of our stories are carried on videos and on podcasts. And we have influencers who are talking about our content to our audiences. And we have events which really bring about that community feeling, and we're really actually able to communicate and engage very, very effectively. But the moment you say magazine brand, somewhere there seems to be a little bit of challenge in the mind of the advertiser. How do we approach saying that a magazine is much more than just print? Because we offer all of these things, and then we have some challenges in.
Don't sell it as a magazine, because magazine will always have the rub-off of print with it. Okay. Sell it as content, because that's what magazine is all about, and that's where all the innovations or integrations are happening in today's environment, where the moment you create very, very contextualized content for your brand, and it happens in a magazine environment, I think the whole game changes. And
Okay.
that's the way to sell, or that's the way to put it across in a brand building context.
Okay, so contextual content for community development and engagement, and using a platform of the brand, and magazine also comes along with it, right? So magazine could be a part of it, right? Yeah,
So we've
that's,
done something like this for a few brands of ours, and
Okay.
I was wanting to share that in the next question when
Yeah,
you said
I was going to come to that. Anita, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, with things changing around us, we need to change. We need to really forget about the fact that we are a magazine. I think we are community builders and engagement platforms. So the minute the sales force is trained to go sell, it not as a magazine. Stop believing, firstly, that you're a magazine. I think it comes from internalizing, and then you go externally and sell it, right? Till now, I think still salespeople in magazines are still believing I'm a magazine seller. As long as you are internalizing the fact and saying, listen, I'm not just a magazine. There is so much more that I have to offer, because I am a platform which engages with audiences. And today, what are brands talking about? All brands want engagement with audiences, because it's the customer, the consumer, who's at the heart of everything. I mean, he's the one who's going to buy your product. So whatever jamburi you do around the customer is what is going to make the sales happen. Yeah, so I think internally we should feel that passe, let magazines be just passe. Let's not talk about the magazine congress, right? Let's talk about community building, engagement congresses. And that is when I think when you internalize it and then go out and sell it, is how it's going to make a change. It's how it's going to, make a dent. To say and it's not about ROI, by the way. I think the minute we look at magazines for return on investments, it's the wrong metrics. I don't think we should be looking at magazines on, where we were talking about ROAS now. I mean, you can have return on investment and jargonize it to whatever level you want. But with the advent of digital, it came as return on advertising spends, because they were becoming accountable. So you knew what was coming, what you were putting in and what was coming out when you were using it on digital. But the minute you say that for magazines, I mean, what will you sell it on? Let's talk about only magazines. What will you sell a magazine on? Will you sell it on reach? Will you sell it on reader per copy? Will you sell it on frequency, shelf life, content? What is it that you will sell it on? So I would think that, this whole thing about us saying I'm a magazine seller needs to go. We are community builders. We are engagement platforms. And the minute you go to an agency or to a brand to tell them, flip it completely and say, listen, I'm not here to sell a magazine, but I'm here to actually get you the customer that you're running after. So probably, I don't know whether I'm making sense, but to me, I think if the sale happens that way, you'll probably get more foots and more doors.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little difficult for this audience here as well as myself to kind of digest that we need to, now magazine has become a bad word and you need to kind of keep it aside, and then you talk about everything that we do.
It's not a bad word. It's
I'm
not
sorry,
a bad
I didn't mean that in the
word.
wrong sense. I was just taking away from what you say.
We adapted to Facebook, right?
Yeah,
We are
true.
adapting to Insta.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah,
I mean, everything
absolutely.
is changing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So rather than saying who we are, let's talk about what we do and how best we engage, right? So we are here, we are storytellers, we engage discerning audiences, and we have contextual content which can serve you the audiences that you are looking for on a platter, right? So that's the way we should probably go about. So what's in a name, right? So yeah, Jean-Paul, anything you'd like to add?
First of all, the Dutch Association of Magazines has relaunched their name into the Magazine Media Association.
Okay.
So magazine is still part of their name. But beside that, I believe in niches. I believe in very special interest and providing content what serves the audience best. And when we are looking to one of the other speakers was talking about first-party data. At the moment, we are working on first-party data. So within a few months, maybe half a year or a year, we are able to serve content to our audiences based on segmentation or a little personalization. And then it means that I'm not selling a reach of 1,100 copies. I'm selling a reach of 50 very high interested people in, by example, one way of farming or the newest tractor of John Deere, by example. So giving and knowing your reader well and know what they would like to read gives you the opportunity to open for contextual advertising. That's what we mentioned it in the Netherlands.
Absolutely. So I'm going to get back to the same topic that you had opened up earlier, Mohit, about ROAS. So I think I've heard what you've said, but I'm just going to reiterate here because typically, you know, with no disrespect intended to any members of the advertising community, when you go to planners and buyers, and when you talk to them about, you know, many things around, end of the day, the talk that comes back is that, where's the money, honey, right? So where is my ROI? How am I going to, they will just put numbers on their computer and they will come back. No, no harm intended. But they put numbers on their computer and they come back, no, it's not working, you don't have the reach, you don't have the numbers, I'm not able to. So the point is, somewhere ROAS seems to have taken over, you know, the mind space of brands, and perhaps because of that with the agencies, right? So ROAS, to the best of my knowledge, from whatever D2C brands that I have spoken to, it could work for the first few months, and then it's an exponential way, you know, you've caught the tiger by the tail. If you don't spend more, you're never going to get anything. So where does ROAS actually figure in your entire scheme of things? How do clients look at it? How do you look at it? How do you recommend? And how could that ever be a solution for brand building? I'm just curious, actually, here.
The reality is that ROAS is there to stay. Fortunately, unfortunately, that's something that is ingrained in everything that we are doing today, thanks to digital, because when digital became big, ROI is what it clearly demonstrated, yes, and that's what the clients and even advertisers and agencies latched onto. Today, the situation is such that clients are asking us for ROAS not just for digital, but even for television. And that's where we have to do media mix modeling and try to tell them how each element of input is determining the output that is there. So we can't really go out of ROI or ROAS because that's something that is built into the system in a very big way. Unfortunately or fortunately, the pandemic made it even stronger, because during that period, everybody cut their budgets and they were looking at return on investments, and ROI, ROAS, ROS, whatever you call it, that became the norm per se. Now, when you said that D2C brands, typically what's happening today is that brand building is happening in a reverse order. If you remember, in our times, the brands used to be built from awareness to consideration and finally to sales. Right now, if you look at D2C brands or any brand for that matter, they first want to look at sales, right? And they want to build the bottom of the funnel and make it strong. But beyond a point, as you rightfully said, the bottom of the funnel cannot continue delivering unless the top of the funnel starts delivering. And that's where brand building happens. So I have seen many clients today who start from performance and slowly move towards brand building. So it's the reverse of what used to happen in the past, because in the past it used to be the brand building that used to happen first, and that used to lead to the sales. So maybe times are changing, maybe the models have changed, maybe the requirements have changed. For D2C and new age brands, there is a huge amount of pressure from the investors to show them return on investments, and hence they have to start from the bottom of the pyramid and bottom of the funnel. So these are realities. And honestly, we have to live in these realities and adapt ourselves. And even a magazine today can deliver ROI. And there are situations and examples in which we have used it for our brand where we have demonstrated ROI. It is up to the agency or the person who's selling the magazine to the client to demonstrate it. If they are not willing to demonstrate it, if they are also living in the old school saying that magazine is print and hence it doesn't deliver ROI, then it will never be sold. But if they have also evolved and they can sell magazines on ROI to clients, magazines will sell, and we are doing that. And when I say magazines, it's not just the print, it's the overall ecosystem of the magazines.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for that, Mohit. Anita?
I have a slightly different perspective. We're talking about D2C brands doing bottom up, right? And after some time, you realize the situation they land themselves in, right? So if there is no brand, there is no performance. Simple as that. By saying that, I don't mean that, you spend years, which many marquee brands have spent in brand building, because we don't have the time. Time is something that is at a premium these days, and I don't think we have years to build brands. However, I think the messaging for a brand that goes out, which quickly brings in that awareness so that it leads to consideration at a later point in time, that time frame needs to be crunched. But we will invariably be caught in this, and rightfully so today. Brands, because especially D2C brands, digital first brands, are all, because they're getting funded and the investors are on their neck. 5 years nobody was talking about investments till a few years back. Today the investors are talking about, and you see their P&Ls, and you will find that most top brands, whether you have Zomato, Swiggy, or Paytm or anybody, look at their P&Ls, right? I mean, they're all in the red. That's because they've been spending investor money. Spending as how? The investor money. But today, investors are becoming smarter, right? So what they are talking about is the fact that I need my returns in year 2 rather than in year 5. So time is of essence. Time is not really on our side. So the faster we try and make a model where we are able to create awareness for the brands quickly, and that comes through storytelling, that comes through messaging, that will come through what the consumer wants, or personalizations. I mean, there are far too many things that are happening. Or as Sean said, that you are talking, you're hyper personalizing a thing. You know what your consumer wants, and you are personalizing that to the consumer. So we need to really look at it from that lens, because it will never be that performance first and awareness later. Much that we want, much that the brands and clients are asking for it, I think beyond a point you will not be able to deliver. So we need to really look at it from that perspective, and ROAS will stay. ROI is, anybody who's investing will ask for returns. So, I mean, you invest in stock market, you ask for returns, right? So anybody who's asking for investment will definitely ask for returns. It is how you sell it. So in the case of magazines, I honestly don't know how I will be able to sell a magazine on, given the current situation, on an ROI. To me, I don't know how I will, when you come to me selling a magazine and say actually ROI, the ROI in magazines can happen when we are talking to a community. So Golf Digest, for example, you're only talking to those handful of golfers, and they are your only community that you're talking to. Yes, it'll make a difference, right? Because you're talking to 5,000 guys, they are your focused audience, and once you're talking to them, you can immediately figure out ROIs there. So personalization, niche content creation, talking to these communities, in various areas of interest is something which will definitely, help the case, to my mind.
Thank you. Jean-Paul, anything to add?
Yeah, maybe a small spot. Why are we responsible for an ROI for publishers when we are not in charge of their content and the message they bring? They send me a PDF and they sell an ad. But is the ad good enough? Is he in the right tone of voice? When they are a knowledge partner of me and they bring a piece of content, is the content good enough? So they always talk to me, the ROI, I've got a few hundred clicks. Okay, I can help you with creating better content. That's an extra service, extra business model. And from that point of view, I tell them, okay, then I will see that the return on investment is increasing. Because a lot of brands are not able to create content. Creating content, it's a professionalism.
Absolutely.
So that's maybe not a few on this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I have to ask you, can you tell us when you have, hopefully a recent example of when a magazine brand has worked for you, how it has worked for you, and what was that distinguishing factor that has actually made an impact?
So I'll just carry the story forward from there. It's content, essentially content. When a magazine is bought for content, and the brand is integrated in the content, and the cover story, the main story, that's when it starts making sense. We've done it for Hyundai many times. Very recently, they've signed up 5 women cricketers. So we have tied up with a magazine partner where we are covering each of them in one issue. So 5 issues with 5 different cricketers. And it's all about how the storytelling is creating an engagement between the consumer, the brand, and the brand ambassador that is there. So it's a very simple and a very effective way of doing it. How will we be able to give a number on ROI? Maybe we will not be able to give a number on ROI, but through econometric modeling or multimedia mix modeling, we'll be able to do an assessment that magazine or these specific inputs that we put over here have delivered to an X percentage to your output. So as long as the client is ready to understand and appreciate that, I think we are good to go.
Okay, that's awesome. So it is working still. So we just need to know how to pitch better to Mohit, right? Anita, can you give us an example when magazines worked for you in your new avatar? In Havas, you guys have always been supportive of magazines, but in Patanjali?
So in Patanjali, I think the use of any medium for a brand depends on what stage of life cycle that brand is in, really. Yeah. We are talking so much about digital transformation. Today, not all brands are digitally transformed, right? So it depends on what stage you are in for that. As far as our brand is concerned, we've been a firm believer in print. Yeah, because for us, the credibility of the written word has always been, delivered for us. And so we are the largest homegrown FMCG brand today. And if you see, I think none of the FMCG brands patronize print. And I'm talking print, which is a combination of newspapers and magazines. None of them patronize print as much as we do. Yeah, people think we are crazy, but it's delivering for us because it's reaching the right audiences, it's reaching the right regions, it is reaching multicultural guys, and the stuff that we are into, which is all about Ayurveda, is something which is resonating beautifully with people. So honestly, the use of magazines at this point in time, for me, serves as a information provider. Gives information on the kind of product categories I'm operating in, right? And we do a lot of, for the lack of another word, branded content or advertorial, so that there is a lot of information on what the product is all about, what does it do for you, what are the benefits of the product. That is where we find that magazines play a good role for us, because there is readership. We've not lost everything in NRS or IRS, yeah, there is readership. It's not as though there is no readership. I think when you talk about readership, the platforms of reading have changed.
Correct.
So it's not necessary that I'm reading a magazine in the print form. Yeah, I like to read it though, I'm old school. But I think the magazines or the articles or the content that you read online, which all the magazines are providing today, are making a lot of difference. So to that extent, we do the essence of what magazines as a medium were always bringing to the table is not gone away. Content in magazines has always been, at the cost of sounding repetitive, will engage with the audiences because it's the content that resonates. Nobody likes to read what one is not interested in. Today when you read newspapers, you look at the headlines and you will wait and read the topic that you're interested in. Same on magazines. I'm not saying I read India Today back to back. I don't. But I will read the articles in any magazine as far as that is concerned. Also, one very important thing in context of India is regional. I think none of us have touched regionalization because it is maybe far more apt for India as a market, rather because we are multilingual. Yeah, so that is a very important aspect.
You're speaking to the right person, Anita.
Yeah, I mean, it was not by design. So I think here still if you see magazines in regional markets, and I'm talking about print form, are still doing better. You know, because,
Thank you.
Yeah, because I mean, people do read it there. You know, there is literacy levels make a lot of difference in markets. You know, there are, I think down south especially, and again, I mean, I know
Thank you.
You represent Anand Vigatan, but it was not by design at all. But down south, because the literacy levels are so high, you know, people still read magazines. Having said that, you know, the text or on digital, the consumption of content in Tamil is second after Hindi, by the way. Yeah. So it's not as though they're not reading that regional content online, but they are doing a combination of both that. So these markets, probably English is overloaded. We've got just far too many options in English. We are all consumers spoiled for choices. Whether I watch a Netflix, whether I do a Prime, whether, you know, I look at a Disney, what do I do? What do I watch? And we've started to sleep less, by the way, right? Because there are so many options available in the marketplace today. And I want to watch everything, but I can't. I want to read everything, but I can't. You know, I still like to read my newspaper in the morning. But I don't read it the way I used to read it earlier, because there is no time. So I think in the Indian context, the regional piece is also very important, because I feel that there are not too many options in that market. So in the south, supposing in your market, there are 3 magazines, 4 magazines, 5 magazines. If you look at English or the Hindi-speaking markets, you've got so many of them. So it also is a question of options. Yeah. Southern markets for magazines in whatever format it is consumed are, I think, far more conducive than at an overall level where, you know, English is a bit of a struggle. That is both for newspapers and magazines. Yeah, so.
Thanks, Anita. So I'm just going to sum up, taking away whatever Mohit, Anita, and Jean-Paul have been telling us. I think we need to kind of rebrand ourselves rather than approaching as a magazine. We are primarily storytellers. We are contextual content creators. We serve extremely discerning audiences, and those audiences are the communities that we build consistently. And we have our own branded studio which produces content across platforms. And we can use these as effective leverages to approach our advertisers and our agencies to be able to get their share of mind, their share of you know, time, and hopefully their share of wallet too. So on that note, I think